is cold.
Yeah.
Oh man, it's just, I'm kind of late for this. I was listening to the crazy on the television talk about the food.
Yeah,
And
she's not doing well.
I know, I
now
know.
we are now we
And you know why? I know
now
his aides
we
must be worried. His Twitter has gone silent since he announced his diagnosis.
yeah
Nothing
now
can stop him from tweeting.
That's right, because you
Except,
know him. That's what I'm saying.
I, I just want to announce that we are live and we are recording, and I don't mind talking about Cheetos
We don't need
or
to talk about
whatever.
him.
no, let's
We can
move on
move
to
right
the
on.
book.
I mean, we can move along. We don't have to talk about him.
Exactly.
I don't even want to talk about him, really.
It's a significant event in
Not for me. So we can talk about our book. Move along.
But yet another lesson in epidemiology. When it's everywhere, it's everywhere.
right,
Yeah.
I
right.
get it. It's like, I don't
Yeah,
know.
and they're saying on the news now that he's being taken to Walter Reed out of an abundance of caution.
Okay, no. You don't do that out of an abundance of caution. He's not breathing well. That's what it
Well,
is.
you know what? There are a lot of people that aren't breathing or eating well because the elites in Washington don't care about that. So I can honestly care less about whether he's at Walter Reed or whether he's at Mount St. Benedict's.
Do you
Because
want to say? Do you want to
No, that
say,
means
Rick,
we
what
might
you were
get
saying
a
about the medication?
yeah, the
they're not.
polyclonal antibody. They say out of an abundance of precaution, we ask for compassionate use. We requested compassionate use of Regeneron's drug. Compassionate use is when you're desperate.
Mm-hmm.
But he's always
But the
desperate.
people don't know those words, so they think it's normal. You don't get compassionate use, like I was telling Michelle, except if it's a child. You tried everything. The child is in huge pain. This is the last chance, but the risk is high. But looking at the state of the child, how worse can it get? It's worth to try. But it's like it's bad. It's a bad thing. I can't get into the link.
Yeah, yeah.
I'll download
Give me a
it.
second. I'll be right back.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
No, I
Okay.
think it's going to
Which
be
link?
interesting because I thought if Biden and Trump would have gotten in and passed away from it, we would have had Harris Pence in the end.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it's pretty interesting. Whatever is going on, and I mean, I hear what Venita is saying about not caring, and I was listening to a program, Utrice Lead. I don't know if you've ever heard of her.
No?
She used to be an editor in Brooklyn, but anyway, now she's got a podcast going on, and she's just one of the people. She's a Black woman, but she's one of the people that believes that there's no reason even for Black people to be participating in the U.S. political system, since we get treated so poorly, and that we just need to be focusing on whatever we can do for ourselves. And so I understand that perspective, but I also feel like we are still in this country. We are still impacted by things that happen in this country. And I do believe that there is a significant world of difference between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, and
Sure.
that
But I think
it continues to be in our interest,
yes,
to
but
to
the problem is
participate until until we decide to do other things. But you don't decide to do other things effectively
the problem
3
is
weeks
that
before an election.
it's very difficult to build autonomy upon a system that is
Yeah.
already existing. You can't either it's a revolution and civil war and separatism and it devolves into the horrible, like Gaddafi was a good guy at the start, as well as Mobutu.
Right.
But after a while they became insane. power changes corrupts people wherever they come
Right.
from. And that
Right.
Europeans know really well. We're taught from a young
Yeah.
age from, old books, how a king fell. So that's why we became good in colonization. We knew how to divide people.
Yeah.
And we see Trump using it's like the end of colonization, what's Trump's strategy, because it's the
Hmm.
terminal phase. Spewing
Hmm.
lies like it doesn't matter anymore to divide.
Right.
But here's the problem: we're not alone in this universe. There are other human, they're not human, but there are other organisms. I don't care about
Yeah.
ideology, where you were
Yeah.
born. And what
Yeah.
I think is I understand her point of view, because the problem is that black people are not many enough to make a change by voting. They're just used as instruments from one party against another, and etc. Used like
Mhm.
tokens, and it's terrible. So I
Yeah.
understand black people not voting. That I understand. White people not voting, I don't get it. If you're an ally, you can vote for black people
Right.
because they're tired of doing it. And also, each time they try to do it, they're told, your ID.
Yeah.
Yeah, you were a felon in this state. Yeah, but what?
Yeah. Yeah.
No,
It's
no.
a real issue. But let's do our introductions, and I'll I'll start by saying I am Loga Michelle Odom. I'm located in Brooklyn, New York. This is our book, The Coming Plague by Laurie Garrett. Newly Emerging Diseases in a World Out of Balance. And this is the first book that we are reading under the banner Reading for Change, a collective journey. We will be here for quite a while into February 24th because it's a big book with a lot to say and a lot of detail, a little bit too much detail sometimes, but still very interesting. And you can learn more about Reading for Change, get invitations to join our discussion or watch our videos on Facebook. You can also look for the Reading for Change page on YouTube, where we are archiving all of our videos. And Rick,
Yes?
your introduction?
Oh, sure. My name is Rick Derry. I'm from Queens, and that's about it.
Queens.
New York.
Okay. And Venita?
My name is Venita Walker, and I'm joining you from Cromwell, Connecticut. Welcome.
All right. So tonight we've been on a break, a bit of a break, and tonight we are picking up on the first half of chapter 6, which is called The American Bicentennial, Swine Flu, and Legionnaire's Disease. And so the first half of the chapter really is all about swine flu. So does somebody want to read the summary?
Sure. Yeah. So, swine flu and Legionnaire's disease. Scientists around the world anticipate a new and deadly virus on par with the 1918-1919 pandemic. When Private David Lewis dies at Fort Dix, New Jersey in January 1976, anxiety heightens. As Garrett explores how viruses adapt, change, and spread, disagreements about predicting epidemics, and some of the greatest plagues in world history, in the first half of Chapter 6, The American Bicentennial, Swine Flu and Legionnaire's Disease, she takes readers behind the scenes in one of the costliest and most exhaustive influenza investigations in America's past, swine flu. The swine flu affair would elicit fierce debate among scientists, politicians, consumer advocates, and lobbyists for pharmaceutical manufacturers. and become the object of a fast-moving governmental mass immunization campaign championed by President Gerald R. Ford. Liberal politicians would capitalize on events to extract funding for social and environmental programs, and Big Pharma would evade liability. U.S. taxpayers were left on the hook for untold billions of dollars by the fall of 1976. In the end, fear, science, politics, and greed intersected to expose U.S. taxpayers to astronomical financial obligations and citizens to questionable vaccines, in the case of a dreaded influenza pandemic that never arrived. At the start of the Carter administration in 1977, U.S. Secretary of Health, Education, and Welfare, Joseph Califano, was struck by the contrast between the early hypothetical outlook and the certain federal mobilization. He hired two Harvard policy analysts, Doctors Richard E. Neustadt and Harvey Feinberg, to answer one question: what went wrong?
What went wrong? A whole lot.
Yeah,
Is she frozen?
I think we lost her.
Oh, okay.
Oh,
Well, the key points and discussion questions are, Rick, what, if anything, did you learn from this week's reading? And what was the most interesting thing to you in this week's reading? And what questions or discussion starters occur to you from this week's reading? What you thinking, Rick?
Okay, we lost Michelle. Yeah, I'd say that don't let science needs to work in isolation. Don't let politics, economics temper with science. Like when you do maths, you're not thinking about money, you're thinking about
Right.
the when you're a mathematician, you're thinking about the properties of numbers, it's very abstract, but this is how you get to new things. It's when scientists live in their little bubble, and because otherwise, it's I think that, and maybe it's true of all life, you need to be focused when you do something important. And so I think one thing that shocked me is that when people epidemics, predictions, all those things that rely a lot on faith. Even if I remember I had a friend who was in in economic sciences, like really, really like big brain mathematics and stuff like that. And he told me they did several tests. That's cool. They would use their theories, very developed, very, very subtle, to predict market movements and buy and sell, shares and try to make a profit out of it based on their models. And they did the same thing, but with a board where they would throw with their eyes covered darts at a board with those same shares, those same stocks. And well, they discovered that the board was 33% more accurate, which shows that problem with prediction is that you can be in the range, but you can often miss. And the problem with epidemics is that you never have really the time to assess how severe it is until it's too late.
That's
because
true.
if let's say we discovered a new strain, everybody has it, and we're like, but nobody develops symptoms, but people will be worried. Wait, maybe one day it's gonna start doing something. So what should we do? Should we warn people? Should we ask people to get tested? Should we make people panic? Should we? And I think nobody wants to pull the plug on the economy. It's like super tough. So I think the problem is we gotta let scientists. And I'm not saying that they're always right, but I don't think they'll be better off with influences that don't understand science or how it works.
Well, you know that old saying, too many cooks in the kitchen, it always becomes a mess.
Yeah.
So I agree.
That's
you
why our
know,
moms would always throw us outside, really like angrily, like, don't come in the kitchen while I'm cooking.
yes.
Seriously,
Hmm.
this is my area tonight.
Hmm. And your
Yeah.
job is to tell me how it tastes when I get done.
And if you don't like
Okay.
it, I'll go away.
If you don't like it, you're gonna eat it anyway.
You do
Because
it
that's what we
once.
have,
You do it once.
right? And that's what we have for dinner. So
You're
don't
fine.
even tell me you don't like it.
You don't know
Uh,
better than you
yeah,
know.
yeah. I used to die sometimes when I think about the old days, and the right and you had the right, no right, just be quiet and be glad you have something to eat. That's your right. Be grateful. You got the right to be grateful, not to complain.
Yeah, but
However,
when you turn an adult, they would hand you the keys and say,
oh,
now you're definitely an adult. What? All of a sudden? Yes.
mhm, that's
And
right.
because they know you're so scared of them that, and it's true. When I do something wrong and I'm 37, I still think about my mom. I'm
Well, yeah, I mean,
like she's
yeah.
behind me, like it's still there.
Mhm.
So even without having a police officer near you, like you can't do that, you won't do it on your own. It's your own police officer. If only we could do that
Well,
officially.
when you're raised with values and respect for others, then that's the way you think. You put things in the back of your head, and one day you'll need them, and you pull them out. Like when you think about your mom, you're like, oh, okay.
Mhm.
My grandmother's favorite line is like, you can see yourself out. Just like that. I mean, this is nice. I mean, she's such a Southern lady.
Mhm.
This is wonderful. Southern Belle, but you can see yourself out. This is lovely. In other words, what we would say, well, she said this is nice. Thank you for coming. Got you right on down.
But in the South, when people are like that, it means they hate your guts.
Yes,
You
yes,
know
yes,
it. They're like, oh, what did I do wrong? She just told me to bless my heart.
yes. Brush your little heart, and smiling. And that's when they are really.
Hey, Michelle,
So,
you're back.
Hey,
well, we've already done, we did the
Were you
key
hacked?
point discussion questions, and
it's my
it's,
little Wi-Fi thing. I need a new battery desperately or something, a new contraption. Driving me crazy. What did I miss?
key point and discussion questions. I read them. Rick gave his opinion. Would you like to give yours? Thoughts?
Good. What's the question?
The standard questions?
Uh,
Or yes, I read those. He gave his thoughts. Would you like to give your thoughts on?
well, I learned a lot. One of the things I guess I interesting was all of the really crazy excuses that people came up with for the 1918 pandemic. What was it? Caused by dust, fish contaminated by Germans, Chinese people, open windows.
Mhm.
It was crazy. And it was just kind of interesting to me that things haven't really changed at all
No.
for years. We're stuck someplace, you
Yeah,
know.
we are.
But
Yeah.
what's strange is that it's always urban societies, like in the Middle Age, on the
Yeah.
countryside in Europe during the Great Plague, people were fleeing and they didn't care. But in the cities, they had so there was it was God's punishment, etc., etc., whatever. People died, but it was the same thing, and we always judged them like they were barbaric people. But no,
Mm-hmm.
epidemics do something strange, and except in Congo and Zaire, where the people on their own, remember, had done quarantine areas perfectly well, had buried the
Right.
dead away from the villages, had quarantined people, had contact trace people,
Yes.
which is
Yes.
kind of wow. You got the
Yeah.
computer? No, we just talked to him. We know him. You know. Um, so
Right.
it's a lesson. Maybe civilization makes people, because every time we have a big epidemic like that, it's always, even the middle age, it struck at the same time. They were the
Oh, sorry.
or so you know what I mean? It's like, is it when we become super wealthy that epidemics strike? Because we become, I mean, I don't know. It's odd, right? It always strikes the people who behave
Yeah.
like that. It always strikes wealthy people. Poor people stricken by diseases, they surprisingly know how to manage them, even if it's horrible.
Yeah.
Oh, look in India, lepers were left aside. They found a way on their own to not get cured, but have a social life. It's very odd, you know, when you think about it. Societies deny diseases all the
Yeah.
time. AIDS, only gay
Yeah.
people, or it doesn't exist. The flu,
Yeah. One of the something I saw on Facebook this evening was telling it was an English person, and they were saying, don't get your a British person, don't get yourself excited thinking that Trump's diagnosis or illness is going to lead him to become more compassionate, or understanding, because that's not what happened in England. Boris caught it.
he's a 74-year-old man. He would have changed a long time ago. It had been
Yeah.
Yeah,
possible.
but who said that? Who would even think that a narcissistic sociopath would anything could change him? That's a mental issue.
Right.
Corona is not going to change the makeup of your brain.
No.
Yeah.
So that was just a foolish thing. Who said that? I missed that.
You know what? If he survives it, he's gonna be like, you see, it was nothing. He's gonna be worse than ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know,
Naive or
what
what?
was the prime minister's name? Was it Boris? Rick?
Boris Johnson.
Well, he saw Jesus and he let people know. I mean, Boris is not narcissistic. Boris is a clown. He got corona and he saw the Lord. He came back and told everybody that this is real.
But he said it's real, but only because I was fat.
Yes.
So it's all about yourself. It's like, it's never about everybody. It's about, oh, I was fat, so we got to fix obesity in England.
Yeah, of course.
Dude,
Right.
you know.
Well, yeah, that's what they're literally saying with Black people, aka African Americans, because we have a high instance of high blood pressure that white folks gave us, a high instances of everything else. Well, we got to fix the Black people. Better yet, we'll just get rid of them.
Well,
You know
COVID
what I'm
is not
saying?
the best way to do that.
So
That's the thing.
You can say that too.
No, but the government, what's more efficient is that, I don't think that's the worst part, is that this epidemic is a good opportunity not to get rid of Black people. That's the system never genocided in one blow. Why? Because in the end, white people in America need Black people to feel powerful. So the whole plan is not to genocide, but to break communities, break spirits, break families, break the ability to gain property or college education or good food, break every opportunity. And it's, I mean, at least if they attempt a genocide, Black people would arm themselves and react. But no, it's vicious, you know? It's like an epidemic. Structural racism is more efficient in terms of having power than war.
Let's talk about it in the context of question 7.
Mm-hmm.
I'll read that one. If viruses don't adapt, change, humans become immune, and the virus dies. Humans are also challenged to adapt or die. Let's talk politics. What do the Make America Great Again slogan and other recent events suggest to you about how the U.S. is adapting to a shifting demographic landscape?
Well,
Go ahead, Rick.
not well. I have a friend who tells me he's Nigerian, says, well, of course white people are going to be racist. They've got stuff, they're not going to give it. And the whole problem is, I think deep down, demographics changing is also the threat that the system will reveal its true colors. Because the more people come, in France, there's a lot of white people, more than any people of color. But there are people we consider lower than Earth that are white in regions like we call them bof, which means the local moron. Like, and we think a lot of people are like that. The Yellow Vest started as a revolt of these people that are insulted by Parisians. And there's really this very brutal way of looking at things like you have mothers who tell their daughters, you will never marry somebody from that region. They're disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole thing is it's based on property. Who owns stuff? Paris owns stuff. These people, they own, it's the pure scorn of the aristocrats. Racism is how the aristocrats' scorn of people was made into a democratic thing. Because colonization was very democratic. People forget that colonization wasn't aristocrats. They would send people, say, hey, who wants to become rich? You can all become rich. The American dream is what colonists were telling, what kings were telling people. You'll become rich there, not here. Here we own stuff, but over there, it's all yours. And there's no police. You can do whatever you want. So it started in Europe, and colonization is really the background of the prototype of what became the American dream. So make America great again. I get it. And I think it's he's managed to do it, because if you really thinks that America was greater during the revolution, during the 19th century, early 20th, we're there. We're there. Yeah. We're there. He did it. He regressed the country to a point that even in the 19th century, they were complaining about. So I don't know. I think it's I think the more I'm going to become old, the more I'm going to become lonely, because people around me seem to always end up saying, yeah, but he's kind of funny. Still a problem when they say that. Right. I don't find him funny or entertaining.
Me either. Venita?
I agree with Rick. As the demographics change, white societies, they're getting very nervous, and rightfully so, because their white privilege is threatened. And when people feel threatened under any circumstances, most of the times, it depends on how severe the threat is, they can act pretty irrational. So, and they're not trying to adapt to the demographic change. And this is why Trump is so popular.
There's also a problem with that is that take
Japan. Rick, remember, let's give each other 3 minutes before we interrupt. Yeah.
And they're just not, they're not even trying to pretend like they want to adapt. And rightfully so. Again, white privilege is very powerful. Many times I wish I had me a little bit. If I had white privilege, I wouldn't want to give it up. It has so many benefits, wonderful benefits that no one else in the world has. So yes, when the slogan "Make America Great Again" is when we were knee benders. When the brown and black people were disused and abused, and poor whites were in the same situation. Remind you, this is all about socioeconomics. It didn't matter whether you're poor, black, white, or otherwise, which is what we're dealing with today. Which is why, you heard me make the comment about the Trump being sick. I mean, right about now, we have people that are sick prior to the pandemic, but also due to the pandemic, and not because of the virus, because they don't have enough to eat every night, because people are laying on the street. And there's going to be more people laying on the street to come. So, his health is not my concern. Not when we got hundreds of thousands of people that are either in the process of being evicted from their homes and having shelter, that are hungry every day. I mean, it's always been, and it's the same game too. If we can't kill you slowly, we'll starve you out. It's really pretty sad. It's very sad, but it's real. And they're doing a good job. I heard today on the news, they're in no hurry to put together a stimulus package at all.
Mm-hmm.
They're sitting around toying about, well, I listened to Wall Street today. Well, things seem to be getting a little better. We have more people employed. Where? We have more people employed. And, they're probably not going to put a stimulus package together before the election.
Mm-hmm.
Now, people have been hungry now. The stimulus package helped out tremendously. Now for what, almost 5 weeks?
More.
Months.
Well, yeah, I'm talking about, as far as when they stopped the stimulus package. The last stimulus package on July the 26th. That was the last week they could receive it. Now, but it's 1-5, but now we're in October. Well, they're in no hurry. Going by Wall Street, they said, well, things are getting better. I think that, all in all, people are doing fairly well. This is on the stock exchange. Who's doing well?
Yeah.
So it's just like they really don't care.
Okay, are you going to help us watch the time, Venita?
Yes, I am. You're right.
That's always been Venita's job in our book groups. I guess to put it in the context of microbes, I get, or viruses, I would say it sounds like both of you are saying the United States is not adapting well to the change, and therefore that means we are living in a dying country. And Rick, what you were saying earlier about not just completely killing Black people outright. One of the things that, I've probably mentioned it here before because I bring it up often, is when we read Medical Apartheid by Harriet Washington, one of the things that she mentions in that book is that I think it was the 1864 census. The federal government was predicting in the mid 1800s that Black people would be dead, extinct from this country by the year 2000. That's how far out they were projecting. And, I think Black people, they needed our labor. The slave master would beat the hell out of you. He'd chop off a leg or two. But they would stop short of killing us because they needed our labor. And even into the Jim Crow era of the 1900s, they still needed our labor up to around maybe the mid-century. But by the 1970s, with factories moving overseas or shutting down and technology taking off in new and fascinating ways, our labor has become, less critical, and it's in fact it's probably taken on a bit of a new relevance in the era of essential workers. I was reading something today where Amazon decided to post the number of people who have gotten COVID working for Amazon. It's like 20,000. But that, but this is a temporary, essential nature to our labor. And so, but I think the thing about demographics is white people are going to be a minority, and and I think that's why there's such an emphasis, such a rabid anti-abortion kind of feeling, because if you're a white woman, I think they want to force you to keep having babies. But if you're a Black woman, you're being subjected to, did you hear about that uterus collector, Rick, down at the detention centers?
Oh yeah, that they're Republicans, but sterilizing women without letting them know what the surgery is all about, that's okay. Life is sacred, but not everywhere.
Life
So
is
no, yeah.
sacred if it's not colored.
Yeah.
Right. It's sacred if it's white. It's not sacred if it's colored.
Mm-hmm.
So there's just going to be a lot of really ugly stuff going on here as we go through this demographic shift.
But what is very strange, I was going to tell to Venita, when Japan closed their borders to the world and slaughtered all the Christians, it was about protecting their identity and their race. White people protect it, not saying that way, saying we're for human rights, we're equal. It's so vicious. Mm-hmm. And the Jews went through that in Europe. Oh, you're part of us. Of course, you're my neighbor and my friend. And the first opportunity, a government tells, hey, why not? Let's get rid of them. We call hiding behind curtains. It's horrible. And when we attack third world countries for their resources in the past, it was like, we like gold, we like your stuff, we're taking it. War. Okay. Now it's not, we're here because you're not able to take care of yourselves. The old colonization gig, and you're crazy, and we're here to help your women. Like that was remember that was a reason why we were attacking Afghanistan after 9/11, on top of 9/11. Free the women. Talibans are running the country now, and we're negotiating with them. Yeah. So it's that disgusting hypocrisy that everybody in the world knows about the West, about white people, but it's more the West, not just white people. It's anybody who partakes into that. You've got horrible Hispanics and Africans in those countries, accomplices of the whole system. They're a minority, that's for sure. But you see the world and you're like, wow, this whole parody of, we need to kill you while pretending we love you. Why? Kill the person. Don't, at least I'd rather have a real criminal in front of me than somebody coming up to me like they're my friend. Michelle?
Is she there?
I think she froze again.
Oh. Okay, so.
Your turn.
I'm pretty set with that one. Let's see. Oh. So she might not be there. She's actually not there.
Yeah, I think her router, her Wi-Fi must have broken down.
Why don't we look at the rest of the highlighted questions?
Yeah.
We should do number 7. That's what we just did. So why don't we just try to read them quickly? Okay, well, let's go to the next highlighted one, which is 8. You want to read that, Rick?
Sure. Well, the Well, the chances of the planet's entire human population becoming immune to a rare virus such as Ebola were nil. It was possible that an easily transmitted ubiquitous respiratory virus like influenza would infect billions of human beings in less than 5 years' time, kill off all the susceptibles, and leave the world survivors completely immune. Laurie Garrett. So, how are you feeling about the president's plan to follow a course of herd mentality or herd immunity, where projected 2 to 6 million Americans will die of COVID-19, actually 7.5 minimum. Hey, Michelle, you're back. We were reading question 8. Do you want to answer that, or Venita?
Let Venita start.
Yeah, I saw the interview, Rick and Michelle, when Trump was talking about herd mentality. When he meant to say herd immunity, I almost died. and he not only did he say it once, he repeated it. Okay. Meanwhile, back in France, we know it's herd immunity. How I feel about it, you got to be kidding. I mean, really? No. You know, there's always casualties of war. There's always sacrificial lambs, but 2 to 6 million people, that's too much of a sacrifice. It really is. Knowing that if you listen to science, in this instance, we can get this under control. We can't eradicate it, but we can control it or conquer it without killing 2 to 6 million people. But that's the easy way out for those folks who want to make their country great again.
Yeah.
You know, why bother inoculations?
Right.
Why bother any of that stuff? You know, clean sweep, bam. And you have to worry about stimulus packages and nothing else. Because guess what? The poor will die quicker anyway, because they're undernourished. They're not, you know, they don't have proper housing. They don't have proper medical. So who's going to go first?
Right.
It's certainly not going to be the fluffy white folks that have the wonderful jobs, live in wonderful homes, have access to wonderful medical care.
Yeah. Or
can simply just get in their car and move around the country where there's less COVID or fly with the damn. That's what they're doing right now. What I tell you, I see license plates coming from all over the place. You know, where there's a high amount of COVID up to the north.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, it is the easy way out. That's just a part of the plan of the lunatics.
I actually have a question for them. So it's been almost 50 years, 45 years that HIV has been wrecking societies and killing a lot of people and destroying a lot of lives. So I think that Republicans should willfully get contaminated with HIV, all of them, because herd immunity will come up one day, right? Well, they don't talk about it for HIV. It's so strange. Why? You see, it's also it's talking points. It's pathetic at that point that people would even herd immunity in that case without a vaccine is called natural selection. You let the people who are not adapted die, and that's called not civilization, not society. If we're going to go nature-wise, I don't obey the laws anymore then, because society has no purpose anymore. Society is here to protect the vulnerable through the help of the strong, who understand that it's also in their interest that, you know, the vulnerable help them when they're wounded or hurt. You understand that strong and weak people are not that weak or strong. Strong people don't stay strong forever. Weak people are not always weak. Right. So that's why we need societies, we need rules to respect each other's differences while being equal at the same time. But if that is no longer the case and the government says it's about, you know, who survives, well, then if I kill anybody at the White House, I take their place. It's mine. We're going back to that thing. Ooga, ooga. Okay. Are you sure that the guys out there who want that will win if it gets there? Right. And I don't want to get there, but it's like, why are you wishing for anarchy in the end? Yeah, it's so strange coming from people who condemn anarchists. They're anarchists.
Right.
Well, and not to interrupt you, but Michelle, I'm not sure whether it was Washington or whether it was Harare. During the more primitive times in the villages, only the strong survive. I remember we were reading a part of the book. I think it was Harari. That's, yes, the Homo sapien. The weaker person, you didn't want to be sick because they would clump you in the head. I'm sorry, it just ran across my mind.
I remember that. Have you read that book, Rick?
Oh, Lord.
No.
Sapiens by Yuval Harari. I love his work. We should I'm tempted. There's so many things I want to read with you guys, but that's one of them. Sapiens.
We should do that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what I would say about the herd immunity, I saw something recently. I don't know if this is accurate or not, but it was saying that 8 out of the 10 deaths of COVID have been among the elderly, and a good proportion of those 8, we're people of color.
Mm-hmm.
And so we know that is why there is such a lack of responsiveness going on to this. So I'm not feeling good at all about a herd immunity plan, but that seems to be the course that the country is on now. I believe that if Joe Biden gets elected, he will, immediately go about effectuating a response. I heard one of the experts the other day saying the United States is no better prepared to handle COVID in October than it was in March.
Well, we can feel that. They didn't have to tell us that.
Yeah. So, we've wasted a lot of time, and a lot of people have died unnecessarily because of it. But I do believe if Biden is elected, he will immediately go about, putting a real plan in place. But if he's not elected, then it looks like Trump really is going to have us on this herd immunity path. And it's interesting. I don't know if it's Russian robots or what, but I kept seeing an article kept coming up on my news feed today, saying that something like 600 or so many hundreds of doctors have come out, have sent a letter to the White House, right, kind of denouncing Fauci and denouncing the lockdown. And I said, that's why I said this has to be a Russian bot that's attacking me. Go ahead, Rick.
It actually started in Europe with the same article, but saying it was German doctors that sent complaining letters to Merkel saying you're a destroyer of liberty and stuff. And that same letter was found in different countries, like in Africa, it was from the University of Dakar in Senegal. So I gotta say, the Russians, they know how to work.
Yeah. But it's created a lot of confusion. And so one of the things that was interesting to me about the swine flu affair is, there was quite a bit of disagreement among the scientists, which, really kind of left the politicians to figure it out for themselves. That meeting, that first meeting that Gerald Ford had where Jonas Salk and Sabin were in the meeting with him. He brought together like the top scientists, and he asked them a question like, basically saying, is there any reason to not go full steam ahead with a plan? And nobody said anything. And so I was like, well, what the hell is that about? He's asking you. He's asking you. And so if there's disagreement, then let's get it out on the table so that as the politicians go to work, they can work from that knowledge.
Gerald Ford was not informed. There's a sacred rule. Researchers do not tell anybody in power what to do. They give them the information and shut up. Because otherwise they become politicians and it's no longer the voter. And right now in France, there's this scandal, the scientific council, people say they're governing now. So you see what I mean? Experts should never tell the government what to do. They should tell them this virus, what can we do? There's this option, this option, this option, this option. Number of casualties, number of handicapped people, you show a scenario-based plan and say, now, Mr. President, you have the choice. You either let everybody die, and then in 3 years it's over, but you'll have 7 million casualties, or you take this plan and destroy the economy for 6 months. There are only 200 people who die.
Right.
Now we're going because it's no longer a problem. And it's not because they're selfish, it's just ethics. Now, also in that case, you can't say no, because if you're wrong about the flu not being that bad and people die, you as a scientist have, and that's also why they don't want to get involved. That's why Fauci was trying to stay neutral.
Yeah.
All the time.
Yeah, but because of their in the swine flu affair, because of their lack of forthrightness. I mean, if they had really, to me, yes, give the politicians the facts. But the facts of the matter were, it's hard to predict when a pandemic is going to come. We don't know this is true. We didn't have any tissue samples or blood samples or anything left over from the 1918. So we're not really sure this is the same thing. There were just a lot of, they weren't really sure why Private Lewis died. They were just, they had all of these questions. So to me, if you're giving the politician the facts, one of the facts is you have some unanswered questions here. So, I kind of couldn't blame the government in this case for moving forward with what turned out to be a really foolhardy plan. But because the scientists didn't speak up, they produced a vaccine that was questionable at best. They left the country on the hook for the insurance liability. I just didn't understand why the scientists didn't speak up.
A lot of them are not used to that. That's the other thing. Most scientists, quote unquote, I'm not saying they fantasize, but like I've been for 20 years thinking about disease X, which became COVID. But it's like science fiction, like, when in the 90s, say one day we'll have a dictator in America, we should be careful. But it was more a talking point between friends. Nobody took it seriously and that's what I was telling Venita. What I learned is that it's only when the epidemic has already started that Until then, it's a hit or miss. Hit or miss. So the problem, think about the H1N1, same thing. People complain, but what should we do?
Right.
Now, I'm not defending them. There was only one person. The first rule for a full plan where the scientists should have said, no, Mr. President, we should wait and see. There was one case. If there was a flu, somebody else would have gotten it.
Yeah.
there was no other case.
Right.
So lobbying in that case, in my opinion, was more the reason why this happened,
Yeah.
from what I read. But
Yeah. Am I frozen?
no, I'm here. I had to finish. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Okay, well, let's see if we can look at one more question.
Excuse me. Fantastic.
Oh yeah, let's look at number 13. I'll read it. The scientist at Rougemont, I don't know, realized it. Huh?
I think it's this Rumont.
Okay, Rumont realized extraordinary efforts would be needed to find the virus soon enough to produce on a large scale and to mobilize public compliance to vaccinate 80% of elderly and at-risk groups if a major epidemic was on the horizon. Given the historically low rate of interest and compliance among physicians and the public with voluntary vaccination campaigns, i.e. 10%, what on earth do you think the scientists imagined they could do to reach a rate as high as 80%? Yeah, that 10% number was shocking to me. I don't know why it should be shocking, because I would be in that 90%.
You and I both. You and I and Rick will probably be there too. So the chances statistically, the probability of it being 10% is not that shocking, because Rick, where's Rick? Would you be in the 90% of the folks that aren't taking the vaccination, or what?
No, I have all my vaccines. Even those I didn't need, because in France, they found it a clever way to get people vaccinated. It's not obligatory. It's highly recommended. However, you cannot go to a public school or private school. You cannot work at a place where there are other people. You can work from home. You can have education from home.
Right, you didn't have a choice.
And that was clever, because now people were like, okay, we'll do it to go to school.
Right.
Yeah, that you didn't have a choice. Yeah, maybe you're the wrong example, but here, we do have a choice. Although the public school system, and I've talked to a lot of professionals like nurses and doctors, their fear is, along with teachers, that they will make it mandatory for you to be able to work, and that's what they're working on.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, not in America.
And that's a problem for me.
In the past, they didn't even need to make it mandatory. It was like, give your social security number to go to work in France. It's like, we need that paperwork, because the scientists fought 80% for only one reason. Ma'am, your son who has polio, your other son won't have it. Do you want that? 80% of people were like, I want the polio vaccine, because they remembered the polio, what it did to their neighborhood and their friends. Oh, I'll get it. The problem is now it's been 70 years without those horrible diseases that killed so many children. So people now think it's all a hoax. So now is a challenge. Like, in other words, you need some diseases to remind people that diseases are horrible and you should get vaccinated. But it's a horrible thing, horrible cycle. Like, I don't know. I don't wish anybody gets sick.
Well, the reason why I say that is because there are people with underlying illnesses that it's a risk for them to get vaccinations.
Oh yeah, and these people not get vaccinated.
I would have to choose between getting a corona vaccination and dealing with whatever ramifications I may have with my lupus.
Yeah, you have an autoimmune disease, you are at risk, so I should get vaccinated.
Right.
Everybody who can should get it, so that you're protected from us.
Right, but what I'm trying to say is that, those are the kind of decisions that we have to make, and being that we have more disease today than we ever seem like we ever had with the vaccinations. Or disease that we know of, let's put it that way. They've probably always been there,
Sleeping.
But that we know of. It's really difficult to make it mandatory that every doctor or every nurse or every child, in order for them to go to school, will have to have a vaccination.
Well, there's one corps that does it, the US military. You can't go to war without all your vaccines, even if you're anti-vax in the US. Trust me, the Pentagon's like, no.
Yeah, but what you do in the
You're going to
military?
Iraq.
Yeah, but you
Your
become the
vaccine.
property of the federal government. So when you sign those papers,
Oh, yeah, that's true.
you become chattel. You're the property of the federal government. So no, you didn't have to sign those papers unless you're enlisted. Well, of course, they have a draft. Other than that, voluntarily, once you do that, you become their property. So that, it's in there.
But remember the smallpox thing?
Yeah.
They forced people. That's how you get 80%.
Well,
Right.
And that's a real political, ethical question now. What should we do? How do we manage those things to get 80%? And I'm an advocate of convince people it works.
Yeah, and I'm not an anti-vaxxer by any means. I got my flu shot last year. I will probably get it soon for this year. But I am very concerned about this process going on with COVID, just because Donald has politicized it so much. And the swine flu affair is an example for us of watching the government push through a vaccine when, it really wasn't sure that it was safe or effective. And it just seems like that's, despite Fauci's assurances, it just seems like that's what's going on here. So I would get the COVID vaccine somewhere down the line, after so many millions of people had taken it and survived. But yeah, I think the only way you get to 80% is with force.
There's something funny that's going to happen with the COVID vaccine. There won't be enough. Chain production takes a year and a half to get to everybody, at least. And we're talking massive billions of hundreds of billions, because there's not just one. You may have some problems. So the rich people are going to get them first. They're going to taste them real world first.
Yes.
This time they're gonna jump on it like the Arab Emirates that bought I don't know how many thousand doses from the Russian vaccine, and in Africa, what country was that? It's a very close country to China, to the Chinese interest. They bought, I don't know, 200 million doses of their vaccine for their army. Those are not really tested like this one. So those are poor people that are going to unfortunately test it, the Russian and Chinese. But the American one, the European one, rich people are going to use it first.
Yeah.
And then we'll see.
Yeah.
It would be interesting.
Well, I'm doing good, with my little mask. And I'm just prepared to continue wearing my mask and washing my hands like a mad woman and physically distancing, for quite some time into the future, because I don't think I'm going to feel comfortable taking the COVID vaccine anytime soon.
And the real risk of a COVID vaccine that is not efficient enough, efficacious, it could be safe, no harm, but let's say it's not efficacious enough. So what happens is that your body has an immune reaction that is not intense enough, but it recognizes the virus as not that strong. That's a problem if you get contaminated, because then the virus sees the immune system attacking him in a very inadequate fashion and makes it actually stronger. And that's what happened with polio in the 50s, when it was compounded by pharmacists who thought they could do it themselves. So, and right now we're all complaining that AstraZeneca's case of myelitis has not been clearly reported. We don't have enough data. It's really concerning, because myelitis, that's potentially vaccine related. That's what, when your immune system attacks your nervous system, the membrane between your neurons and your spine, the very myelitis. Without this membrane, you become insane. You get dementia. You become blind. It's protective of your nerves. So when you have one of those diseases, MS is one of them, where you lose that membrane over time and you become paralyzed and stuff.
Yeah.
We had that with a vaccine at AstraZeneca's phase 3. They need to provide scientists the details about that patient as soon as possible. Oxford, that runs the trial, has reported it's myelitis, whereas AstraZeneca says it's not a vaccine-related disease. I'm sorry, myelitis is vaccine-related. It could be a pure coincidence, but as long as we don't know, we can't release that thing.
Right.
We can't. It would be, it's dangerous. I know, maybe just 1% out of 1,000. If it's me, I don't like it. Or you, or
right.
no. Not safe enough yet.
Right.
Okay.
Oh, I forgot to tell you some good news. In France, Pasteur Institute, the one that, the Americans and the Pasteur Institute, CDC always say, we discovered AIDS. No, we did, all the rivalry. They announced to the French yesterday that they have found something that cures COVID. They cannot say the name because they don't want investors and speculators to buy that stuff, and they found something. They're very happy. So they say we're running a placebo, entirely closed trial where nobody knows what they're taking. We want to see if it works. So, but not before the next 3 months, that's for sure. But they said have hope. Something is very impressive. Says nothing that's been tested yet. We'll see. If that's the case, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
If they found a cure, that would save so many lives, so many innocent lives. And they say it's cheap. They don't say it's like they say it's something that already exists, but we can't say more. That's all. So, I love the announcing. It's probably to call people up. Hopefully it's true. It's Pasteur. But it would be great because in that case, if it's cheap, well, if ever people get COVID and it gets worse, corticosteroids work really well. And they're cheap, super cheap. So pharma is like, oh. Oh.
Okay. So, any final thoughts on the swine flu affair?
Yeah, like Venita was saying, too many cooks in the same kitchen.
Yeah. Certainly were. So, okay. I guess I will see you guys on Wednesday to talk about Legionnaire's disease. I haven't finished my reading yet on that one. So
I haven't started that part.
That should be very interesting. I've always wondered about that.
I never heard about the origin.
Yeah, I didn't either. I think I don't even know. I was aware of epidemics and pandemics, but for some reason I don't know what happened at that point in my life with the Legionnaire's disease. You know what I'm saying? I knew it was there. I saw it. I knew that they speculated it came, how it was, what happened through. I think it was a ventilation system, but it just went past me for some reason. I wasn't awake.
I thought it had existed forever.
1976, we were teenagers.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Okay, right. Just like now.
we were busy.
Yeah, you know what, Michelle, that's what I'm saying. I was wondering why it just went past me, because that's what's happening now. That's what's happening now with COVID, the college students. What made you 1976. Think? What made you think that college students, 18, some even younger, 17, starting college, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, give a hoot about some COVID when there's a party going on tonight? What made them think that?
Mm-hmm. You know, it's like,
not because it has nothing to do with whether they're intelligent or smart or good young people. No, they are young. Are you crazy? Anybody think about they have COVID?
it's like if you take teenagers that are 17, 18, 19, 20 and tell them,
Yeah.
okay, you have the house for the weekend, no drinking, no drugs, and no sex. Okay?
And we'll be
Okay?
in Fiji, and the parents will be, and the parents on top of that, we're going to Fiji Island. We all be out the country, and we're going to tell you, like, really?
If I'm a dad one day and I have teenagers, I will never, you're like, oh, okay, I trust you with the house this weekend. Don't invite anybody. It's like, are you dumb?
I've never done
know
that.
the minute you're gone, you're like, he's gone.
No, I've never done that. They're good guys, but yet I wasn't trying to test them. I was not trying to tempt them. You know, so I'm like, no, I don't think so, because Michelle and I know that is not no. Mm-mm.
Teenagers deserve to have some fun in life,
and they do,
especially these young people, because you know, as I said earlier, we are living in a dying country, a dying world.
Yeah.
You know, California is about to go up in smoke. You know, yeah, between the unaddressed climate change and all the issues that's causing, the total failure of leadership to effectively address our issues. You know, I mean, I don't blame young people.
I don't either.
When I was a kid,
I blame everyone else for thinking for a minute that you're going to open up college campuses and then turn around and slap them on the hand and tell y'all ain't mine. You're crazy as hell.
Right.
Oh, they partied really in college. How dare they?
You know, we're going to open up part of the way. And what you guys are going to do is you're going to come to one of your lectures per week.
Right.
The rest of the time, you're going to stay in your room like prisoners on the campus. This is your college experience.
Okay.
And you're going to do everything online. What kind of crazy plan was that for anyone?
And you know what I love is you were talking about California when I was a kid. I always thought California would disappear because of the big one. The big earthquake everybody's waiting for. No, it's going to burn out. You're like, what?
It's going to burn out. Yeah.
Before the earthquake had a chance? That's not fair.
Yeah. And Trump is running around talking about sweep the floor. Rake the forest.
No, we all know. No, it would have made a huge difference because of all the anarchists that were burning the forest. And, you know, you listen to people, you're like, gender reveal parties, burn forests. That we know.
Right.
Anarchists, I'm not too sure.
Right. So, you know, but it's really I feel bad for the young people, you know, and even the real little ones. I mean, you know, my grand.
People, it's horrible. I mean, it's horrible for us. We can deal with it better. Some of us, obviously, some can't. But for the rest of the population, I know it's. I can imagine being a teenager or raising my little people. And my sons were young during this time. I couldn't even imagine. Yeah, the stress.
I mean, to have to see that the adults, the leaders, you know, just really don't care about you. Yeah.
You look at the kids. We're actually pretty. In my neighborhood, we're all super astonished by how calm the little ones are.
Oh, they're good.
They've been very good. Like they know this is big. But then they look at the presidential debate and they see two old people throwing pudding at each other in the retirement home. Seriously, it was. I watched it for 3-4 minutes. And I said, it's useless.
It was painful. Useless. It was very painful.
It was useless.
But you only watched it, but Venita and I forced ourselves to watch it
entirely.
So then entirely.
Did you get any brain incident after that?
No, really.
Yeah, it was a real headache. But you know, but I was glad to see the president call on the Proud Boys. You know, because we need to be clear. we need to be aware. We need to be awake. We need to understand what's going on here.
I mean, why are people
I
surprised?
didn't know the
Steve
Proud Boys
Bannon was
were.
his campaign director in 2016.
We know. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It takes that for people to realize. I mean, he started with Mexican or rapists.
Yeah.
Yes.
He never lied about the racism.
He didn't.
No, he didn't. And, you know, Venita and I were talking today because, you know, Mary Trump is back in the news. But one of the things she said when she first came out with her book was, you know, I could have come out in 2016, but, you know, Donald was being upfront about who he was. You know, I figured everybody could see for themselves. So, you know, why would my voice make any difference?
Right.
And he was elected anyway. And even now, I mean, I had a very good conversation with one of my nephews the other day because I had heard from his mama that he was not planning to vote. And so that was very disturbing to me. But I understand why people feel like that. You know, I'm going to vote. I'm going to always vote. But I understand why people are just completely turned off by this process. But as I think it was Rachel Maddow that was saying after the debate, that actually is Trump's strategy to make politics look so ugly, so disgusting, so nasty, so funky that nobody can stomach it.
Yes.
And just stay home. That's a part of his voter suppression strategy.
It certainly is. And I'm glad I watched that night because I had to see what's going on. And by the way, Rick, Biden is an old white man. But they actually counted how many times Trump interrupted him, which was 70 times.
No, but Biden
and he interrupted Trump 20 times to try to shut Trump down so he could actually, answer some questions. You know, I mean, Trump was like I don't know. He was the biggest clown. I mean, it was just so sad.
Well,
it was
Biden
just so sad.
Did one thing good. He never answered to Trump to the camera, which is an old Kennedy trick.
Yes, of course.
People.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And he did that systematically when Trump was becoming the gutter. Oh, Hunter and your son hid drugs. He lost his son. And he looked at the camera and talked to people who have brothers, sisters, sons, fathers, mothers addicted to opioids.
Yes.
So,
right.
But the issue is, unfortunately, to me, if I had been Biden, I would have shut up most of the time and let him rant. And I would say, no, let him rant and just stay still. It would have been so daunting for Trump because he needs opposition. He needs somebody, and the thing with Trump that really worries me is that if he's reelected and he survives all that and etc., he's going to change the Constitution back to before Roosevelt.
Oh, sure.
There won't be any limits to the term anymore. We'll be Russia.
No. That's what he's trying to do. If he gets elected again, and he said it, I'll negotiate the 4 years after I get my next election.
Through the Supreme Court that now he has.
Yeah.
Yes.
When to me, the real event is RBG's death. I was like, I can't blame her, but I'm like, oh.
Right.
She held as long as she could, Rick.
Of course, 87, 5 bouts of cancer. How did you? Wow. I am gonna hold on. Oh.
But this is dangerous now, and he's telling you what he wants to do. Donald Trump always tells you what he's going to do. I mean, it's no secret. Everything you know that he wants to do, you're going to know.
It's only when people say, you can't say that. It's like, oh, I did say that. But originally, he's always like, I called the Russians, and I called Ukraine, and I did that. What's the problem? What? No, I never said that.
Yep. And I called Woodward 20 times while I was on the toilet. And the man didn't ask me to call him at 2 o'clock in the morning.
No, and what I really depresses me is that I can gut a dictator. You can fight him back. But maybe that's a myth, because my big problem is I'm discovering that people support him. The guy tells them, oh, I knew it would kill your butter. but I wanted to play it down. And they're still like cheering for him.
Yeah, well, I'm telling everybody. So I have to tell you too, Rick. Have you ever watched The Handmaid's Tale?
Yeah, I got Hulu finally.
Oh, you did, and you've seen it.
Yeah, just the first season, and it was really disturbing sometimes. That guy is wow. It's
It's very
the problem
disturbing.
is people like that.
Yes,
They don't have the government to do that yet.
yes,
But
and
I know guys who think like that. Not friends,
yeah,
but I've met guys
right,
like that.
right. It's so realistic that it's eerie.
Yeah, it's eerie.
I forced myself to binge watch the entire 3 seasons last weekend,
No spoiler.
and it was mostly depressing. Um, and I think that's mostly because I binged it.
Mm.
But I think that it is really a good show for people to watch because, and this is what I was saying to my nephew, who was not really planning to vote, except after talking to me, he told me he would give voting some serious consideration.
Nice.
So, but I was trying to say to him that I think we have to allow ourselves to have a really clear vision of how bad things could be. Because they're bad now. They are bad. But they could actually
Really
be
bad.
worse.
Oh yeah.
They could actually be worse. And if Trump is allowed 4 more years, to continue on the path that he's on, there may be no saving us.
Well, today, when my husband got back from his business trip, he went over to his place where he usually is, and the conversation with the Trumpers is this going to be a civil war? And it is going to be a civil war.
My Nigerian friend who's been in the
That's
army
what
here,
happened.
you know what he says? There won't be any civil war. And I'm like, why? They have property. In Nigeria, we had civil war because then you have a majority of the population that's starving and starting to not have anything, and they are stealing from them. So people get even angrier and take weapons. In America, people have too much to lose. And the people who have nothing are still a minority compared to those that have something and guns and weapons.
Well, the slave owners had a lot to lose during the Civil War. And so as a result, they received reparations.
Yeah, that's fucked up. Excuse me.
Well, yeah. But, I think that if it comes to civil war in this country, we could anticipate that those who have will be compensated for whatever they've lost, and they will rebuild. They will rebuild.
One little thing you forgot: if there's a civil war in America, it's up for grabs, which means Russia, China, France, Italy. Everybody's going to try to get involved in it, like Syria. Look at how Syria didn't have its own war. It's not a civil war; it's a war by proxy. Everybody's in there. It's like the Cold War in Vietnam. They're going to use America like this.
But Rick, we who consider ourselves the good guys, I'm sure, we are not the ones that are instigating civil war. The man in the White House has been doing this for years. White people have been out arming themselves with arsenals
since 2008.
My brother tells me you can't buy ammunition right now if you want to. Yeah. And so to stand up at a presidential debate and tell white boys, stand back, stand by.
Yeah, stand down, stand by. That's what it did.
That means get ready to act.
That means get ready to act. So it's not us that want civil war. But, if you're not playing offense, then you're going to have to play defense.
There's one little thing that Donald Trump and the Proud Boys and everybody out there arming themselves forget. And I always remind Second Amendment, soft citizens about one thing. You can own as many AK-47s, any little tanks you want. The US Army has stealth airplanes, bacteriological
Absolutely.
weapon, 4,000 warheads, things we can't even. It's the massive power. Even Russians are scared of America. That's why they're attacking that way.
Right.
If they were that powerful, they would have attacked militarily a long time ago.
Right.
If ever there's a civil war in the Pentagon, I believe the military, I've criticized a lot of the US military, but I believe they do believe in the unity of the country. If they
Mm-hmm.
intervene against so-called Civil War troops, it's going to take 5 seconds.
Yeah.
So I think people should calm down. I think a lot of people also, they always talk about Civil War when there's a demographic change, not when there's actual oppression.
Yeah,
Right.
That means it's not about Civil War. They're calling for
no,
genocide. It's a code
no,
name for let's go after the people we don't like.
that's
Right.
it.
Right.
It's the lynching. They're calling it stand by. That reminds me of those old 40s, 30s movies, black and white, when they were trying to denounce racism, some of them, and of course, but you see some of them where the police commissioner, there's a woman who's been raped, and she couldn't see her aggressor, and people say it's probably the black neighborhood,
It was
and you
the
have
black
the
man.
commissioner say, stand down and stand by. And when the judge acquits the black boy because there's no proof, the federal judge, then the commissioner says, go for him, in the movie. That's the same idea. It's a code
Right.
for genocide. In Rwanda, they did the same thing. There was
Yeah.
wait for it. There will be a
Yeah.
signal. So,
Yeah.
it's scary.
Yeah. But what we don't seem to have is the power to stop people who are intent on having a violent confrontation. And so I pray that it does not come to that. But if it does, we're going to have no choice but to try to defend ourselves. And if that means slaughter, it means slaughter. But, nobody's going to just stand by and get beat on.
And I think they all these guys from some of these states where they love weapons, they should try New York. We're not armed, but they don't know this city like we know it, and we'll know how to stop them.
Yeah.
We'll make them use the MTA system. They'll be lost. They will never come out. We will be able to crush them in the corridors. But no, here's the thing that my grandmother, who went through 2 world wars, frontline, used to say: nobody knows what it is. People wish for that. They either never been to war and they're liars, they're cowards that pretend they were in the army, or they're just children, because
Right.
war is not about fighting. Because I had my great grandfather used to say, First World War, you shoot first, the Germans don't shoot because they're all cowering. Then you have to cower and they bomb you. And so you're not like it's not a boxing match. There's no honor because when you kill, it's by accident because you're part of the whole.
Mhm.
It's not about prowess or bravery. It's
And
about number.
that just reminds me that, in this chapter, the swine flu affair, where she was talking about the 1918 pandemic. That was, what some of the doctors, like the Army doctors, were saying, that a part of the reason that pandemic was as bad as it was is because of the war conditions that were going on, So here we are in the middle of a spiking pandemic, facing the prospect of civil war breaking out in about 3 weeks. It's insane. It's just insane.
So that the lesson is terrible. It's
we don't
elect a black
learn.
man at the White House. Don't.
Yeah.
Because literally that's what they're saying, we're punishing you
Yes.
for doing that, because I read an idiot who somebody said those were the worst years. Biden said those were the worst presidency of all time, and said, yeah, 8 horrible years. I think it was Kid Rock, knucklehead. And you're like,
Mhm.
really, really,
Right.
really? Because even if you don't like Obama, you got to be objective. Obama didn't do a millionth, even 100 millionth of what Trump did.
Right.
It's not comparable. So if you're a little objective, I know libertarians who are like, no, Obama, I don't like Obama, but I miss him.
Yeah.
Because if you're
Yeah.
objective, you can have your ideas politically and disagree with somebody, but you can't be like, no, this is better than Obama. No.
Right.
I regret Bush. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
George W. Bush now is a good guy. What?
Yeah. Yeah. So anyway, you all, let me run.
Okay.
Have
Thank
a
you, Michelle.
good
Thank you,
week.
Benita.
Okay, Rick, we'll see you next week. Same
Yep.
place, same time. All right. Good night.
All right.
Bye. Take care,
See you
everybody.
next week. Bye.
See you.